Yeah, I love your work. It's so fascinating. But for those who are not familiar, let's start out with just a basic definition. What is energenetics?
Hmm. Energenetics is the tone of the song of our DNA. And it's the idea that we don't just inherit hair color and eye color and that sort of thing, but we inherit tonal tendencies. And for me as a sound therapist, what I have observed is that when we have particular emotions or a tendency towards indulging in particular emotions regularly, that expresses as a tone in our body. For example, depression has a kind of quality when you feel depressed. And when we're anxious, it has kind of a fluttering quality. And if we had one parent who was depressed and one parent who was anxious, we may have inherited a tendency towards both. And we try to solve a problem like that at the level of me and mine without realizing that it actually may be a pattern that goes back many generations.
Mhm. So you brought up a really good point that people may try to fix this, for lack of a better word, through therapy or other various processes. How can you tell if this is something that's actually in your DNA that didn't start with you?
It's a really good question, isn't it? Well, you could certainly look at your parents, and if your grandparents are around, you could look at them and see. What's interesting about emotional tendencies is that people don't always show how they really feel. And somebody can appear fine, but underneath, what's going on internally is a very different story. So it isn't easy to tell. And many of us came from parents who were in a generation where they didn't talk about that sort of thing. Everything just got internalized. And so they might have been that way and you didn't even know it. But I think for the most part, we can tell to some degree, and certainly if you have aunts and uncles, you can see what kind of tendencies run in them. Family patterns definitely exist, and it's nature and nurture. It's in utero, it's in the environment that we grow up in, but it's also in the composition, the fundamental composition of who we are.
Mhm. Right, right. That makes sense. So, with regard to sound and the music of our DNA, etc., how let's see, where do we start? We inherit our sound patterns, our DNA from our ancestors. Do we have our individual individual tones that are being sort of distorted by their patterns, or is this something that this is who we are and then we can shift the patterns with sound?
I think the answer is both. So, what I've found using tuning forks to give people tune ups is that the human body is really a self tuning instrument. And when you reflect its noise back to it, it will use that input, that biofeedback, to self regulate into a more coherent expression. Same with if you have scurvy and you eat a lime, your body will use that input to correct itself. So the body we are just a packet of vibration, and we're either in tune and healthy, or we're out of tune and falling apart in various ways. So the body inherently, the human genome has within it factory settings of harmony. And when I'm tuning somebody, their body might have to go back many generations in the DNA to find a clear signal, possibly back to origins, who knows how far it goes back. But that information, that pattern of harmonic perfection is present in everyone. And so in a way, it's just your own humanity remembering itself, but also your own body having its own experience too.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of different levels that are going on.
Right. Now, one of the things that I found really fascinating about your work is that you've discovered that the right side of the body has a stream that resonates with your father, and then the left with the mother. Please go into that because that I think is one of the most fascinating things I've ever heard.
My research over the last 25 years has been bouncing sound off the human body and listening to the signal that comes back. And I've worked on average, well, I began working right over the body. But after 10 years of that, I accidentally discovered that there were interesting things going on around the body. And I started working from about 6 feet away, taking a vibrating tuning fork and combing it very slowly through the atmosphere, through the biofield, which I call it now, of the body, and observing what happened. And what I discovered was that there appears to be standing waves in our body's electrical system, which I've come to see as a toroid or torus, which is essentially a sphere with a spiral channel down the middle. And that is our body's electrical system. Now, since every single impression that we get in life is really electromagnetic, our vision, our touch, our taste, our hearing, those are all translated into electromagnetic signals in the body. So every experience that we have in life is electromagnetic. So it would make sense that our memories are stored in our body's electrical system, and standing waves is generally how information is stored electromagnetically in waves magnetically. And that is what I discovered combing through the field, was that there appeared to be an actual anatomy and physiology to this biofield. Now, it took me years to map it, but just like we've mapped the brain and we figured out that different parts of the brain do different things, I mapped the biofield and I observed patterns that showed up in person after person. And so one of the features of the biofield anatomy is what I call the ancestral rivers. And I experience them as two flows of current that go down either side of the body, about 10 inches off the body. And it's a current that's maybe 2 inches wide. When you're moving towards the body and you hit this current, you'll find that it produces a tone that's very different than what you've been working with up to that point. You've been working with the memories, the life experience of the person that you're working with. But when you hit this ancestral river on the right side, you're basically sticking a fork into the information stream of the DNA of the father and the father's lineage. And a skilled practitioner can actually hear the stories in that, hear the tonal tendencies, hear the anger, hear the depression, hear the alcoholism, whatever is there. But as soon as we stick a fork in that and the dissonance becomes evident to the body, once again, this self-repairing tendency kicks in. It's like the body's organizing intelligence perceives the distortion and starts to immediately work with the coherent input of the tuning fork. It's just like a metronome. It's a coherent rhythm. So it's a wonderful tool for balancing itself against, and will start to shake the noise out of the signal. And so oftentimes when we think about our ancestors, I think we tend to think, especially people who are on the healing path, very often the ancestors were like not so great. And there is noise and there is a discomfort there. But the fact of the matter is that we're here, right? Our ancestors were survivors and they gave rise to us, and that there's also gifts and strength and knowledge and beauty also in that signal. And so when the body tunes its own DNA, it gets the noise out of the signal and it amplifies the beautiful signal underneath, the true signal, the undistorted signal. And it's very interesting to me. I've worked with thousands of clients, and very often when we've spent a lot of time in the ancestral river, we've gone deep into it, they notice a difference in their parents and also in their offspring. So there's really very much a sense that the information here is very living, it's very dynamic. It goes upstream and downstream in real time. And it can be, and any tuning that happens in this spot has ripples out into the rest of that DNA strand.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that the healing goes up and downstream. Now, correct me if I have this wrong, but I believe that upstream is ancestors and downstream is descendants. Can
Yeah.
you explain how that works?
Yeah, that's just the way that I perceive it. So much of this experience of exploring the field, it was sort of like teaching myself a form of Braille, where there's a fundamental language of vibration that really all of nature speaks. For example, when we feel fear, or a dog feels fear, an animal feels fear, or even when a plant feels fear, it's all the same vibration. It's all this. So every single emotion has its particular frequency signature. And that's why your dog understands you, or your horse understands you, because they feel your vibes and they speak the same language. So gosh, now I've forgotten your question, Lisa.
It's about the ancestors being upstream and descendants being downstream.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why I went into the language of the vibration, but
It's
yeah.
all good.
Oh, I know what I was saying. So there's a feeling sense that I encounter in the field. I just feel things and I hear them, and it resonates in my own body, and there's a kind of knowing that happens. So when I'm in the ancestral river and I'm feeling it, I just sense and know that going up above the head is upstream. There's a feeling of information coming down this way and kind of going down to our descendants. And then that sense when you're working in it of that information going back upstream, and maybe going over to cousins, going down in small doses.
Huh, okay, so I know people are going to be wondering this. I'm certainly wondering this. Is this something that we can heal on our own if we have tuning forks, or is it best to work with a biofield tuning practitioner? How would that work?
Well, I think that it's definitely possible to do your own healing in your own way. I think that we can use our voices to do it. You could just tune into the stream of your ancestors and allow yourself to start toning or making the sound of whatever that sounds and feels like, and really exaggerating the noise, the anger, the depression, and then sing that yourself into harmony,
Mhm.
because our own voice is the most powerful instrument for healing that there is.